What up, though? I'm Red Death, and welcome to my channel. We're going to be talking about wrestling today. I fell in love with wrestling when I was really little. Probably WrestleMania 1. Far as back as I can remember. I can't remember before that, or I just remember WrestleMania 1. I don't know if I watching pay-per-view or maybe a live recording. I'm assuming a live recording because I was like a baby pretty much when that came out, so it was a little bit after that, but not many years after that. But excuse me, but so I fell in love with wrestling back then. So the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan, was my favorite wrestler of all time. He was larger than life. He was the biggest guy in the business. He made wrestling what it was. So I was watching him all through the 80s. He was my favorite wrestler. Rest in peace, Hulkster. As you can see, I have the LGN Hulkster. But this is they brought it back. It's a Target exclusive. You can order this at Target. I actually found this in store, but look, exactly it was in the 80s when I was a kid. Like, he's rubber. Pretty cool figure. I think I showed this on one of my short videos. Look for that. And I got my winged belt here. I think this is the best looking championship belt ever made. And I got my little Funko Pop, Jake the Snake. He's my second favorite wrestler of all time. Funny, I got to meet both these guys recently, last few years. And anyway, so with, growing up to WWF, which was WWE, that was my first love for wrestling. So, like, I got into all the video games, the arcade games, the WrestleMania for Nintendo, the original Nintendo. You got, arcade game, WWF Superstar. You got WWF, WrestleFest. Those are all the arcade games. They were awesome, you know what I mean? So, like, wrestling was everything to me when I was a kid. I had a buddy of mine. His family had money, and they used to buy him all the stuff he wanted from, I think it was a wrestling magazine. They used to order anything he wanted. Like, if he wanted Hitman Bret Hart's glasses, he had them. He had Hulk Hogan's foam finger, if you remember those. He had everything you could think of. And the only thing I ever had when I was a kid was the figures. I had a lot of the figures. Like these, the big LGN in the 80s, then in the early 90s when I was about to stop collecting wrestling figures at that point, but that was like my last little run. They had the little, I don't know, I forget what company makes them, but they're little plastic ones. They have like the action. I remember I'd get those at Toys R Us when I was a kid. My dad used to take me every week. Anytime I'd see him, I'd be like, Dad, I need a new figure. And he would take me to Toys R Us and get me, my favorite wrestlers. I had all my favorite wrestlers. And I remember they had a little ring. It wasn't like the big ring like these ones. I remember the big ring. I think my brother had one. I think it was white and it was like this thick of plastic. It wasn't very thick plastic, but I remember it had decals on it. It had the ropes, but it was like sat like that high because, these guys are big. So I sat up in a ring like that. But yeah, I had the littler ring with the early 90s toys. And check out my toy video. I talk about it a little bit there, how I used to, whatever toys I had left, I'd make like tag teams, and I'd take all my toys, like my Ninja Turtles, my Star Wars toys, and I'd turn them into wrestlers, and they would wrestle each other, and stuff like that, in my wrestling ring. I think that's probably the only thing I really had was that wrestling thing that was, expensive to us. I didn't have the t-shirts. I didn't have the Hitman glasses. I didn't have nothing like that. My family can afford nothing like that. But, so yeah, that was pretty much all my love for wrestling. And so in the mid 90s to late 90s, all the wrestlers from the 80s that wrestled in WWF went to WcW. So, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, all them were in WcW with like Sting and Ric Flair. So like they created NWO. So like the NWO run and everything was like when NWO ended and WCW ended. That was like when I stopped watching wrestling. Like right before the Attitude Era took over. The Attitude Era took over. I already stopped watching wrestling. You figure in 1999, I was just turned 20 that summer. So I wasn't young anymore, I wasn't a kid anymore. So a lot of the kiddish stuff I used to get into, I kind of put to the side. A lot of it had to do with me thinking that, wrestling was scripted and it wasn't real fighting. I think that kind of bothered me when I got a little bit older, in my late teens. But I learned to appreciate it now. But back then, I didn't really appreciate it. I didn't really understood. When people said it's fake, I kind of agreed with them. But it really is a sport, though. It's just like basketball, football, just like any sport. With a little bit of acting and storytelling. I mean, they're physically putting themselves out there. People get hurt, all kind of stuff. It's not for the weak. People train. It's not phony as you would think. I mean. The fighting, they're not really trying to hurt each other, you know what I mean? It's a dance, more or less, That being said, so after WCW, I wasn't watching wrestling anymore. I just stopped watching. To about 5 years ago, I got back on the train. It wasn't WWE. They're the big dogs still. With the males. The male wrestlers, they all were the same to me. They're all like man buns, beards, and muscles and tattoos. They all look the same. Like, what happened to all the original like crazy gimmicks and the bald, beer-headed wrestlers? Like, where'd those guys go? Like, with the crazy gimmicks, like the gimmicks that I grew up were gone. So I was like, ugh, I guess I still don't like wrestling, but I started getting into women's wrestling with Alexa Bliss and Liv Morgan and Charlotte Flair. I was like, what is this? You got some beautiful women. They're doing these crazy moves I ain't never seen before. And they all have different gimmicks. None of them are the same. Like, they kind of have a bit of that old school wrestling feel, that bit of wrestling that I grew up to. So I was like, oh, what's this? So I started watching. I was like, this is pretty dope, So about, I don't know, a couple years ago now, a year or two ago, you ever heard of JCW? It's Juggalo Championship Wrestling. I actually, I did a couple of videos at some matches. You check those out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And so I started watching that because, like I talked on one of my streams, I'm an Esham fan. And Esham is down with Insane Clown Posse. So I start getting back into the Insane Clown Posse. So I saw that they're still doing the wrestling. I know they've always had their wrestling, but they kind of changed it up a little bit. They call it JCW Lunacy now. And so I watched from their first episode, which was like, I think a year or two ago. And I watched every Thursday would come up with a new episode. So I got addicted to it. Every episode I was watching, you know what I mean? I've been following the storyline since they started the Lunacy. And I love it. Like, the gimmicks for the males reminds me of old school gimmicks once again. Like, how things used to be. I love it, man. Like, I wish WWE was like that still. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think I was ever gonna be in independent wrestling. Like, seriously. I've seen JCW like years ago. Back in like 99, 2000. Right when I stopped watching wrestling, pretty much. so I didn't really watch, I didn't really follow or try to follow because I was already disappointed that, NWO was gone. Well, I think they tried coming back in WWE, but like, WcW was gone. So like, all my wrestlers retired. There I got too old. A lot of them, most of them weren't wrestling anymore. A lot of them passed away. So like, I didn't get into JCW when they first started their Insane Clown Posse started their promotion. Sorry if I fumble my words sometimes. I'm just not used to speaking to a camera. I feel like I'm talking to myself. It's really weird. I've been doing this for a couple months now, since October. I'm still not used to it. But help me. Subscribe, please, so we can do this live, so I can chat with you guys, interact. I won't sound like a fumbling reject. It's weird. Probably people think I'm like drunk or something. I don't know. It's weird. I'm just not used to speaking I feel like I'm talking to myself, like I'm having a whole conversation like a crazy person. I know you guys are watching. I know people are watching, but I'm just not used to it. But so let's talk a little bit more about the video games. So my favorite wrestling game of all time was WCW versus NWO Revenge for Nintendo 64. A lot of people love that game. I think that was the only one I got into for Nintendo 64, but it was my favorite all time. I used to love that game. I still have that game. So like, I've always got into the games, I played one of the recent WWE ones for, I had a PS4. I forget what year it was. Maybe 2023, 2024, maybe? But, they had all the new school wrestlers, which I didn't care for. I used all the old school ones. Or the women's. Or I would make my own characters and stuff. And I think I made a Big Boss Man because they didn't have Big Boss Man in the game. So I made a Big Boss Man. And I think they didn't have Brutus Barber Beefcake. He's one of my favorite wrestlers too. I made a Brutus Barber Beefcake, stuff like that. The only thing sucks, I couldn't get all their moves. But to make them look like it, I did it and stuff. But, yeah. Pretty much I can think of wrestling-wise. I mean, there's so much. I could talk about wrestling for a while, I guess, and talk about the moves and certain wrestlers, and you know what I mean? Oh, I have been watching A&E. I forget what it's called. A&E. It's on A&E. It's where they go out and look for like wrestling apparel from like big wrestlers, and Mick Foley does it. I watched an episode where they were looking for Dusty Rhodes apparel, and they wanted the polka dotted, the black and yellow polka dot, his wrestling gear. They wanted it, and they had Cody Rhodes, his son, on there, and he had some, and they were trying to get him to part ways with it. I think he just like donated it to some kind of WWE supply. What do you call it? I don't even know what the heck you would call it. Where they show off all the wrestlers, all the old school wrestlers, gear, their accessories, stuff like that. I don't even know where the heck you would even find a place like that. Maybe I'd have to Google it, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's really interesting. I watched an episode where they went to Florida and they got a pair of NWO trunks for Hulk Hogan. This is when he was alive, and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. There's some episodes on YouTube. You can find that. But, alrighty. One more thing before I go. I might be doing, like I have been doing on my other JCW videos, I might be doing a JCW live recording of one of the matches like I've been doing. I'm going to try to commentate. It's so hard to commentate because it's loud. There's people around you. You know what I mean? You can't hear yourself think sometimes. And I know I can do a way better commentation, commentating these matches, but it's so hard. If I had a microphone, I sit down like a real commentator, yeah, I'd do it all day for you guys. Maybe I'll get to that point one day. Um, like I said, don't forget to like and subscribe, and peace.